Hey investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey and I'm excited because recently I received a shipment from Stephan's new coffee company, Bankroll Coffee, and even sent this thank you card, which was really nice. And they included 5 bags of 12-ounce coffees, which includes the morning drip and double down and hodl, as well as diamond hands and everyone's favorite 20-cent coffee. And I wanted to compare that to my usual routine of having Starbucks coffee, and this is representing 16 ounces or an exact pound. And this is a bit of a difference because you can see here that this 12 ounces is a little bit less than how Starbucks usually has their coffee in a 1-pound bag. So that's something to keep in mind as far as keeping track of how much you're getting in a bag of coffee. And usually the kind of coffee I get is this 2.5-pound bag from Costco of Starbucks French roast, or if there's other kinds of blends of Starbucks available, I might get those if they're on sale. And I try to do what Stephan does of only buying this when it's really on sale. So this could retail for around $18 for 2.5 pounds of coffee, which is pretty good in general, but I even wait until there's an actual sale from Costco on top of it. So I got this bag of 2.5 pounds of coffee for only $12.99, which if you divide that over 2.5 pounds that come in this big bag of coffee, that works out to only $5.20 for a whole pound of coffee, and that's a lot of coffee for not a very expensive price. And if you're also just as grateful to Stephan for all of his awesome personal finance and daily life videos, I'd love if you could please smash that like button because I'm also a pretty big Stephan fan, and I greatly appreciate it because every like and subscribe greatly helps out with the YouTube algorithm, and I'm eternally grateful to you for watching as well. Thanks. When I watched Stephan's They Shut Down My Coffee Company video, it inspired me to want to try his Bankroll Coffee to see if I could achieve the 20-cent coffee that I know is among folklore, and a lot of people comment, and Graham's had plenty of videos referencing his 20-cent coffee. So I wanted to see if by buying the total portfolio, which was the best value out of all of the options, because by buying in bulk, I didn't have to pay that $5 flat shipping fee. So to me, it was a no-brainer to pay the $43.21 for 60 ounces of coffee, which actually works out to 72 cents per ounce. And this compares to what I usually get from Costco of that $13 French roast bag that's 2.5 pounds, so that's 40 ounces. So that works out when I divide 13 by 40 to actually 32.5 cents per ounce. So already by being a nearly 40-cent difference, that's pretty significant already. So I wanted to get to the bottom of how much am I really paying per cup of coffee. So just like me, you might be wondering how much is a cup of coffee in terms of fluid ounces, and this will vary depending on the manufacturer or coffee brand. And according to common coffee makers like Mr. Coffee or Hamilton Beach, they might give it a range of 4 to 6 fluid ounces per cup of coffee. And I normally think of a cup of coffee as something like this, but even this is actually measured to be 11 ounces, give or take. So maybe you put 10 ounces of coffee. So to me, I think of this as a normal cup of coffee, but it's actually a little bit more than the standard 8 ounces, let's say. Or in the case of Stephan's coffee, it actually says on the back of the coffee bag, 10 grams or 2 tablespoons of coffee per 6 fluid ounces. So maybe Graham considers 6 fluid ounces to be his standard cup of coffee. So let's also see how that compares to other things. If we look at this short Starbucks coffee cup, this measures to be 8 fluid ounces. So this is pretty small, as opposed to if someone gets a tall cup of Starbucks coffee, which most people consider to be their small, that comes in at 12 ounces. And to give a comparison, this Starbucks coffee mug is 14 ounces. So you can even see that at the bottom of this mug, it's 14 ounces of coffee. So this is a lot. I usually have myself around 12 ounces of coffee because I have another Starbucks mug that's around that amount. So to me, I consider that my usual day's worth of coffee. I worked at Starbucks for about 5 years of my life, starting as a teenager in high school and through my early 20s in college. and Starbucks is my go-to, not because it necessarily tastes the best, but just because it has a reliable amount of caffeine that keeps me awake all day, and I only need one 12-ounce cup of coffee worth of this Starbucks to stay awake all day. And to me, that's pretty good because I know what I'm getting, and I find ways to not overpay for this Starbucks. Like if I bought this 1 pound of Starbucks at a Starbucks store, this is equivalent to $12.95, and if it's a special version of espresso, then this particular one might be worth like $14.95 or so, so almost $15. But I don't pay that much. I try to aim closer for only getting Starbucks at $5 a pound, like that Costco example I shared. But this type of Starbucks coffee is a dark roast, so it tends to have a little bit less caffeine than more medium or light roast like the blonde roast. And for dark roast, this comes in at 130 milligrams per 8 fluid ounces. And for the 12 ounces I consume, it comes at 195 milligrams per 12 ounces. So to me, this is good enough. And as a point of comparison, this Starbucks Via Instant is 8 fluid ounces for this pack, and that also gets you 130 milligrams of caffeine. And I also want to note that Starbucks bag I was just holding up also shows the same as Stephan's back of his bag, where it shows for 2 tablespoons or 10 grams of coffee, that gets you 6 fluid ounces. So it's interesting how this is for 8 fluid ounces, and then this measures out to 6 fluid ounces. So a little bit of a difference as far as Starbucks also using their cups of coffee. And I almost forgot to mention that your everyday grocery store coffee usually has only 95 milligrams per 8 fluid ounces. So compare this to what I'm doing with Starbucks at 12 fluid ounces, being almost double the amount of caffeine at 195 milligrams. And that's for only 50% more coffee at 12 ounces. And this also compares to, let's say you get espresso shots. Each shot is 75 milligrams. So to me, if I wanted to have around my daily intake, I would need to do about 3 espresso shots, which is usually what you get in a grande Americano at Starbucks. There's 3 shots of espresso in an Americano, but I don't often go to Starbucks because I have very similar values like Graham. I believe in saving as much money as possible so I can be wealthy, and that means that I don't usually go to a Starbucks store to buy any overpriced coffee. So with that being said, I'd love to know how much this ethically sourced premium coffee from either Brazil or Colombia might have as far as its caffeine content, as well as I remember Graham saying that this was fair trade coffee, but when I look around the bag, I don't see the symbol that I usually expect to see for the fair trade coffee. And so this would be something to kind of look into if it is possible to show that this is fair trade certified, because that's probably a good way to sell more coffee when you show that it's fair trade, or even better if it's organic in the future. So just a little bit of something I noticed. As another point of reference, I watched Graham's 2019 video about how he gets 20 cents of coffee out of a Peet's bag of coffee. And I looked up Peet's bag of coffee on Ralph's to know how many ounces that was. And it's 12 ounces in a bag of house blend. And I know he said that he likes to wait for it to go on sale to be $7.99 for that bag, which actually works out to the equivalent of being $10.67 if it were a pound. And so seeing that, it also makes me know that per ounce, he paid, if he includes tax, at $8.70 total. That works out to 72.5 cents per ounce. And if he didn't pay tax, like I don't pay tax on my coffee when I buy it from Costco, then his final amount for dividing $8 into 12 ounces would work out to about 66.7 cents per ounce. And I was curious to see how much caffeine content would be in Peet's coffee, and a website of theirs says that for 6 fluid ounces, it can range from being anywhere from 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. So it could be a good amount. I'm not fully sure. It seems like a good amount, so I'm gonna take Graham's word for it that it helps keep him awake enough for his day too. So I went on a quest of trying to measure out in the most scientific way possible if I could achieve 20-cent coffee based on Graham's recipe of using 2 tablespoons or 10 grams of coffee to 6 fluid ounces, and figure out what I would end up with. So I went about getting a scale, and I just happened to have the scale, and I made sure that it seemed to weigh appropriately. I even put a Cliff Bar to make sure that its weight seemed pretty aligned with how much it should be. So 0 grams really meant meant 0 grams on the scale to start with. And then when I put a bag of grams 20-cent coffee on it, it came out to 353 grams or 12 ounces and 3/8, which including the packaging makes sense. And I also put a bag of Double Down, and that came out to 359 grams. So all of it is checking out so far. And I even poured all of the coffee out and I put it in a clear bowl to also weigh that. And so it definitely came out to the expected amount. And it was even a little bit more than 340 grams per bag of that Bankroll coffee. So I feel pretty content that it was an accurate amount in there. And who can beat the fresh smell of freshly roasted coffee? Like what Graham says, he says that where it's made, it's locally roasted and then shipped the same day. So I think that's pretty awesome. And normally I just like to take a paper filter and throw some coffee grinds and then brew it in a typical coffee machine. But this time I wanted to treat Graham's coffee with extra care and treat it super special. So I brought out a Starbucks French press and I used that to be able to measure exact amounts of all of the coffee. So I busted out 2 tablespoons worth and then I hand ground that. And it actually surprisingly takes a long time to hand grind coffee beans. And by the way, that's another plus. I'm super happy that Graham decided to include whole bean coffee because when coffee's already ground ahead of time, it's not as fresh. So back to our story in that I was hand grinding and then I poured that into a Pyrex glass and measured it again to make sure that it came to around 10 grams, and sometimes it weighed a little bit more, like 11 grams, but more or less I had 10 grams of ground coffee. And then I put that in a French press, and then I put exactly 6 fluid ounces of steaming hot water into the French press, and I let it sit there for exactly 4 minutes as to what you're supposed to do with a French press normally. And then when I got that out, it worked out to being only 5.5 ounces remaining out of that 6 fluid ounces. So I know I lost a little bit of fluid ounces because some of it was probably absorbed in the grinds, or maybe I just didn't get to pour all of it out yet. But more or less, it's pretty close to that, almost 6 fluid ounces to this 1 cup of Bankroll coffee. With all the numbers I've been throwing at you, you're probably wondering, how did the coffee actually taste? So in the French press, I use Double Down, which is a medium roast that's considered rich and bright. And when I tasted this hot out of the French press, to me, I tasted more caramel and nutty notes, which reminds me of more Colombian style coffee, which it could be also Brazilian because I might have tasted a little bit of chocolate notes. So it's a toss up to me as to whether it could be Colombian or Brazilian. But my hunch is that this is probably closer to being Colombian because Colombian coffee is usually more on the medium roast side, and I'm not as familiar with Brazilian roast. And then I put the hot coffee into my fridge like Stephan would do, and I cooled it down so that it could become iced coffee. And I put some almond milk in this to cut a little bit of the black coffee taste. So when I try this, it's so refreshing on this hot summer day, and I'm super pleased and happy that Graham produced a great tasting cup of coffee. So thank you. This cup is for you, Graham. And just when you thought we were done with numbers, I have a few more to share with you so that we can get to our final verdict of whether I was able to achieve 20-cent coffee with Bankroll Coffee or not. And as a point of comparison, I want to use the Starbucks espresso pound of coffee, which comes in at $12.95. And if we divide that by 16 dry ounces, that works out to 81 cents per ounce. And in comparison, let's look at this 20-cent coffee for 12 ounces, and this comes out to $9.99 retailing on the website right now, and this works out to 83 cents per ounce. And then if we look at Hodl coffee, this is actually retailing for $10.99 on Bankroll Coffee right now, so this actually works out to 92 cents per ounce. And then as a final comparison, if I buy all of the total portfolio at full retail price of $52.95 and divide that by 60 ounces, I get a final price of 88 cents per ounce. So already compare that to what I got when I bought the total portfolio at a discount. I got that down to 72 cents per ounce, and then compare that to my usual, the Starbucks from Costco. I usually have that at only 32 cents per ounce. So to me, this is a bit of a splurge in paying more than double what I usually pay for in terms of my coffee. And now for this video's grand finale of the final verdict as to whether 20-cent coffee really costs 20 cents for a 6 fluid ounce cup of coffee. So if we use my Starbucks example of 2.5 pounds, this is equivalent to 40 ounces or also 1,134 grams. And so if you take 10 grams out of that, the 2 tablespoons per 6 fluid ounces, this gets you 113 servings. So when I divide 113 into $12.99, I get 11.5 cents per cup of coffee. So to me, this is pretty cheap to be able to get it down to only that much of 11 cents and a half. So let's say that's almost 12 cents per cup of coffee. And then when I look at having Graham's Bankroll Coffee, I'm able to get this at 340 grams, and if we divide that per 10 grams, that gets you 34 servings per one bag. And I got 5 bags, and remember, I got it at the discounted price of $43.21. So when I divide all that out, and when you do 5 times 340 grams, that gets you 1,700 grams. So I divide that into $43.21 per each amount to get to 6 fluid ounces. That works out to 170 servings across all of the 60 ounces, and that 170 ends up leading to, drum roll please, 25 cents. So I got this at the equivalent of this 2020 America Simona National Park quarter with bats on it. 25 cents for a cup of Bankroll coffee at 6 fluid ounces. So like I talked about earlier at the price per ounce, it's again more than double what I get this down to at 11.5 cents compared to 25 cents. So again, like the math I was talking about earlier, but I'm okay with that because it's a great cup of coffee and it's for a great cause of helping support Stephan's channel and helping him grow his coffee business. And maybe if he goes public someday with his coffee, I'll buy into his company. And also maybe I can think of this as not just a luxury for my daily morning coffee, but also as a business expense for getting this coffee. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you learned something, I hope you'll like and subscribe, and I wish you well on your journey to reaching financial freedom. Go and watch Graham's video about how when you save money buying coffee and only spending 20 cents per cup of coffee, you can become a millionaire. So I highly recommend Graham's videos, and I appreciate you. Till next time.